Apa khabar everyone? Welcome back to Asian Insider, where we go across the causeway and explore Malaysia's current affairs and trends every fourth Friday of every other month. I'm Zurairi A.R, Assistant Foreign Editor at the Straits Times. And joining me as always is our Malaysia Bureau Chief, Shannon Teoh. Shannon, good to have you back.
Good to be back from across the causeway as usual.
And our guest today is someone who has been tracking Malaysian politics and governance longer than most, Dr Francis Hutchinson, coordinator of the Malaysia Studies Programme at ISEAS Yusof Ishak Institute here in Singapore. Francis, great to have you on the show, and of course in the house here at the News Centre.
Thank you very much. You've got a lovely studio, and I'm very happy to be here and also happy to be featuring alongside Shannon.
Well, Shannon, Francis, welcome. I'm not sure if you have been following the World Cup, but have you had any chance to watch any of the matches at all, or any standout performance so far?
Yeah, I'm a football fan. I've been trying to follow it, but without slacking off from work. Some of the games are at 9 in the morning, 12 p.m.
Yeah.
So those are not opportune times to be watching games.
Staying don't tell the bosses.
If you do, don't tell the bosses, right? Pretend you need to still watch the highlights later in the day. Some of the games 3 a.m. difficult to stay up and watch those. But I did catch some of the games. I really like the Korea's first game where they came from behind back to win because they were dominating the game. There was this small matter of Lionel Messi scoring a hat-trick, which, the guy still got it at this age, right? It's interesting because now it's a 48-team World Cup instead of 32. There are a lot more games, a lot more smaller nations involved. And you get to see, I feel like it's a very long tournament. It's going on for very long. But, it gives a chance to a lot of teams that could otherwise, not experience a World Cup. But it's also happening at the same time of stuff that we're going to be discussing.
Yeah.
A couple of state elections. So for those of us in Malaysia, we'll have one eye on a contest happening here and another eye happening on a contest in America. So hopefully we don't confuse the two during our coverage.
Yeah. I wish they would shown the World Cup on the big TV, big screen in our newsroom. Yeah, Francis, how about you?
So I haven't been following it directly, but I do have two informants that work for me for free, and those are my sons. And so they are avid followers. They've been keeping me up to date. Mm-hmm. And then to Shannon's point, I've really enjoyed seeing some of the smaller countries like Curaçao, like Cape Verde.
Yes.
And then I also have a connection to New Zealand, so I was very happy in the first half of the match this morning when they were leading 1-0 against Egypt. But then, of course, unfortunately, things took a turn for the worse, and then we lost 3-1.
Yeah, well, still got time, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, so Francis, before we get into the heavy stuff, you've been watching Malaysian politics for a long time now. With everything happening at the moment, with the state polls, the snap election speculation, I imagine your schedule probably a little bit hectic. Perhaps you can tell us a bit, what are you working on right now in ISEAS?
Sure. So I actually just came back from 10 days in Malaysia, and I took an opportunity to visit different parts of the peninsula. So I was in Penang, and then in Alor Star in Kedah, then KL, then JB. I went out by plane and I took train all the way back. So actually, I can now tell you very happily that the ETS between KL and JB is really good. Really, really good. And when I was in KL, last week, we launched our book. So ISEAS has a tradition of producing an edited volume on every Malaysian general election going back more than 20 years now. And my colleague Lee Hock An and I, as well as many colleagues in our Malaysian Studies Programme, as well as a range of academics based in Malaysia, produced a book on GE 2022 and the state elections in August 2023. Now, books take a long time to produce, but it's a nice book with lots of maps, illustrations by the famous cartoonist Zunar, and a range of other things. And it came out last week just as things are getting panas for the upcoming polls. So I think the timing is quite good.
Yeah, and it's lucky that the book is coming out now, right before the thick of things. Okay, so for our listeners who follow Malaysia from a distance, we are recording this on June 22nd, and things are already moving fast. Johor is voting in over 2 weeks, and then we have Negeri Sembilan following in August. And hanging over all of this is a bigger question. Like, is Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's unity government, will it stay together? I mean, will it actually go into the elections as a electoral pact? So today, both Shannon and Francis are going to help us make sense of it all. I mean, I promise our listeners that we will make it worth your time. So stay tuned and jom, let's go. Right. So Johor, the assembly was dissolved in June. I mean, like, well ahead of the scheduled expiry. And now, the striking thing is that all three major coalitions, I mean, like Pakatan Harapan, Barisan Nasional, Perikatan Nasional, I mean, like, they all said that they will contest all seats. I mean, all three of them. And then we have, of course, the Youth Party Muda, and then former Minister Rafizi Ramli's new party, Bersama. I mean, this is becoming like a free-for-all in a state where BN has historically dominated. So, Francis, on Hafiz called this election very early, right? I mean, like, and then Johor has long been considered UMNO's fortress. I mean, it is the birthplace of the party. So, for this state election, what does BN actually have to achieve here? I mean, beyond just winning, of course. I mean, like, is just holding the state enough, or does it need a certain kind of victory to like make a point before the 16th general election?
Okay, so thanks for the question. So I think let's look at what UMNO and BN would ideally like. So really what they would like is to generate momentum. So of course, when we look at the schedule of elections, Malacca was going to come first, but okay, fine. We have Johor, we have Negeri, Sembilan, and then we have Malacca and Sarawak. So for the first three, of course, UMNO is strong in these states. It has a deep association with all of them, but of all of them, most particularly with Johor, as you mentioned. Of course, UMNO was founded in the state, and a lot of the country's founding fathers, first generation, came from Johor. The other thing is that it's got a very expansive membership base. But there's also one thing, I think, a little bit of a hidden asset that perhaps people don't appreciate. And that is by having separate state elections, UMNO can use its national level machinery. So I was just in Penang, as we were discussing, and I was talking to someone in a branch, not a division, which is at the parliamentary level, but a branch. And just from that branch alone, in Penang, which is not well known for UMNO, they're sending 4 people from that branch down to help with all of the election machinery, organization, logistics, and then from there they're going to go to Negeri Sembilan, right? So they can really leverage their national level machinery. Now let's talk about what they want. So they, at this point in time, they have 40 seats out of 56. Now their, if you like, problem is that they really need to keep at least 40 seats. They would like more, but they are going to look a bit strange if they call the election a full 1 year ahead of the maximum term, and then they end up with fewer seats. They're going to look wrong-footed, right? And I think also perhaps what they're beginning to kind of see now is that the machinery of government at the federal level can kind of complicate things. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean the fact that we can, and we've been reading that there are going to be expedited immigration and customs controls from Singapore going back to Malaysia on the Malaysian side to help outstation voters come back. There's also discussions of more ETS, the train I took, more services like that of people coming back as well.
Just for the state election.
Just for the state election. So, of course, UMNO has its machinery, but shall we say the unity government, and more specifically within that, Pakatan Harapan has some of the federal government machinery that they can use that can make things perhaps a little bit more favorable to them.
Or harder for Barisan Nasional as well.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, like, Shannon, I mean, of course, you've been on the ground in Malaysia. I'm not sure whether you've been to Johor yet ahead of this state election. But we know Pakatan Harapan and BN are both federal partners. But in Johor, they are going head-to-head. So what are the voters and the grassroots workers, I mean, the campaigners, how are they processing this? I mean, like, it feels weird, right? I mean, like, but is it just accepted as a normal quid pro quo when it comes to this? Or, I mean, like, is there like real tensions?
I think it's very unique. So if you kind of rewind the clock, the last time Johor had the election, 2022, it was also a kind of unity government kind of structure, right? It was Perikatan Nasional and Barisan Nasional also in government. But at that time, there was already tension between the two, right? Because Muhyiddin had been deposed and Ismail Sabri had become prime minister. It was very clear that it was a marriage of convenience. This is going to end, right? We don't actually like each other, and this is going to end. The whole language and tone of this Madani government under Anwar is that, it's supposed to be some great national reconciliation and, work together and rebuild the country after all that politicking that happened in the past 4 years, which has not been the way it has actually panned out. And quite obviously, right now, when things are, as a timeline for this parliamentary term is ending, all of a sudden you have UMNO and Barisan Nasional kind of jockeying to be in the best position for the next general election. So I'll say this: when you ask about the at the grassroots, the voters, the party workers, I don't think they've ever been comfortable. This idea of UMNO guys being comfortable supporting DAP or DAP guys comfortable supporting UMNO, so on and so forth. There's always been that sense of discomfort. We're doing this because some higher calling, right? Because Ella said so, or so that Anwar can be prime minister, so on and so forth. Not because I want to. In my heart of hearts, I think that UMNO or DAP has changed, right? That's not how it's been. So I think that tension continues into these polls. It's I think you can even see it in kind of the awkwardness of the top party leaders. Just a few days ago, Anthony Loke went to Johor.
That was
his interaction with the Menteri Besar on Hafiz was much looked at. I think we'll probably link one of our stories on that about how Anthony Loke was pouring water for on Hafiz. Kind of pot shots that On Hafiz was taking in his speech, so on and so forth, right? So and these are top level leaders who are very used to saying one thing and doing another, right? They can attack each other, but then once everything is done, they are sitting in a room doing deals together, so on and so forth. And this is at the top level. The tensions, the awkwardness is already there. At the bottom, there's a lot of people who are kind of even happy that this is happening. Finally, I don't have to go to my neighborhood ceramah and speak to my voter, my constituents, my neighbors about why am I working with DAP still. I can tell them now we're not working with DAP anymore, right? There's even this sense of relief. Suddenly we can go no holds barred. So I think that's the real sense. I'm not going to say that the entire 3.5 years before this was a lie, right? No one was actually working together. It was a matter of political convenience, yes. And I think if things had gone a certain way, if the two parties, the two support banks could have accepted each other, maybe they would go into this whole thing as a partnership, but it just hasn't turned out that way. The real politic has to take precedence.
Yeah, and then depends on how the results will pan out later.
Yeah,
I mean, we may see them again in bed together, right? Okay, so zooming out slightly, right? I mean, like many have framed this state election as sort of like a preview of the national election because inevitably because it comes before it, right? So, what is a single result in Johor that would perhaps change how the political conversation going to the general election? I mean, like, do you think it will be about the, size of the majority or the performance? I mean, like, so if a Singaporean is looking at the Johor state election, what would they need to take out of it ahead of the general election? Maybe Francis first?
Okay, so let's look at each of the three coalitions, and then I think I can propose one indicator each. So if we look at Barisan Nasional, I would invite observers to keep one number in mind, and that is 600,000. Now, what does this 600,000 mean? This means that roughly, give or take a few thousand, this is the number of people that have showed up to vote for Barisan Nasional in 2018, so simultaneous state and parliamentary elections. Then we fast forward to March 2022, state elections separately. And then we move to November 2022, the last parliamentary elections. And each time, this is 600,000 voters. So this speaks to the machinery, the discipline that Barisan Nasional has, that come rain, come shine, they know who votes which way, they will show up and bring them out to vote. Now, if we see a swing up from this number, this means that Rumah Bangsa is working. And we're bringing back some people from perhaps Bersatu now that Perikatan Nasional is imploding.
Okay.
So this is one statistic to look out for Barisan Nasional.
Okay.
For Pakatan Harapan, I think we should look at turnout. So if we go to March 2022, turnout was 55%.
Okay.
Now, this was in a context, right, where we had COVID controls and it was difficult to show up. But nonetheless, this speaks to the fact that Pakatan Harapan's voter base is a bit different, needs to be motivated by itself to turn up to vote because you don't have the same machinery.
Okay.
And you still rely on outstation people. Now, if we move to November 2022, the turnout is above 70%. And that is because these are now national elections, so the stakes are higher, more interest in national level politics, and so people come back to vote. So I think we should look for Pakatan Harapan at turnout, and more particularly, we were discussing expedited immigration controls. Do we see convoys of people coming down from KL, the ETS train? So let's remember, Pakatan Harapan has a higher outstation voter base. So this will help us understand if there's a bit of still of mojo, that even for a state election that's not so important, the base comes out by itself, organizes itself to come out to vote.
Just to vote for Pakatan. Yeah.
And then for Perikatan Nasional, I would say we need to look at its geographic spread in two specific areas. So the first one is Muhyiddin Yassin and his area in and around Pago. They have two seats, one PAS-based and one Bersatu-based. But all around there, he's been associated with that constituency since 1978. So much machinery. Actually, there's something called Education Hub in Pago. All surrounded by oil palm, and then you've got these very beautiful buildings in the middle of that, right? And that was something that he brought there during his time as a cabinet member.
Yeah, correct.
Then we go across to Muar, and it has two state seats, one Endau and one Tenggaro. And last time, Bersatu won it, but really on the back of PAS supporters. Now, why is this? And actually, this was Endau. The next seat is Tenggaro. They almost took it. And why did they win that, or almost win in the case of Tenggaro? It's because you have a lot of fishermen. It's a big center for the aquaculture fishing industry. And these are people from Kelantan and Terengganu that move south and that tend to lean towards PAS. So these are the two centers, one more Bersatu, one more PAS. Now, we don't know what's going to happen in terms of who's going to contest and the logo and all of these sorts of things, but look at the spread. If we see a spread out from Mersing, then that's more PAS. If we see a spread or some kind of hold in and around Pago and the seats there, Maharani, which is held by PAS, and Bukit Kepong, which is held by Bersatu, that really speaks more to the sort of influence of Muhyiddin Yassin.
Okay.
So these three things. So number one, 600,000 BN. Number two, turnout for Pakatan Harapan. Number three, geographic spread for Perikatan Nasional.
Yeah, and we at Straits Times will keep an eye on those. Shannon, you have anything to add?
So now we know what stories to write for.
Yeah, thanks, Francis.
I think when I thought when you asked that question, it made me think about what are the kind of most chaotic outlier results that would mean the most change to the status quo, right?
Yep.
If you get status quo results, if BN wins 40 seats, then okay, business as usual, and we move on with life, right? And I would say that if in the case of, on the one hand, say something like Sabah happening again, and Pakatan wins less than 5 seats, let's say, and BN wins close to 50. Let's just pull out some random numbers, right?
Yeah.
I think in that situation, you will get BN doing what they did in 2022, which is to try and agitate to have a snap election, general election, as soon as possible. They'll do everything they can to destabilize the current, ironically, unity government. And see how far they can go. They on their own don't have the numbers to deprive Anwar of a simple majority. It's not that simple. They can't just snap their fingers and do it. They might have to convince GPS, maybe Rafizi's party, so on and so forth, right? Any other kind of disgruntled MPs, let's pull out and let's go for a general election right now. the other kind of chaotic outlier result, I would think, is that the same thing happens to Pakatan, but also voters for some reason punish Barisan Nasional for, and they take the messaging from Anwar that why are you pushing for a state election now when we should be focused on the economy, dealing with the energy crisis, so on and so forth, and generally just BN's habit of going into politicking mode and destabilizing national politics in this kind of run up to a general election, right? Because that's also in Negeri Sembilan, I think there's a sentiment that this is because of UMNO, right? Pulling support for the existing chief minister. And the protest votes goes to Perikatan Nasional. Now that would be crazy, right? Imagine if PN won 20, even a simple majority. This is, people think about Perikatan expanding its wings to Pahang first. Maybe Selangor, Perak, states like that. But them making inroads in Johor, I think, would be very shocking, not just for Malaysians, but also for Singaporeans because Johor is right next door, right? And what this means to Singapore-Johor relations in terms of the economy, investment, stuff like that. So I think these are the kind of outlier results which would change the status quo the most.
Okay, we're done with Johor, so now let's move to a national level. I mean, like, you were just talking about snap election earlier, right? I mean, like, we were surprised when in May, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim sort of like, telling the Pakatan Harapan convention in Johor Bahru that he would actually call for snap election. But since then, we have not seen any. In fact, from your analysis, Shannon, I don't think we may see that in the near future. And his stance has softened a bit. So the central question for the general election seems to be like, will Pakatan Harapan and will PH and BN fight together or not, right? And even if they do, the seat negotiations, I mean, like, that is going to be very, very painful. Okay, so what I want to ask both of you, realistically, I'm like, is there any evidence that this electoral pact between PH and BN is set to continue to GE16, or is there any even like desire or negotiation happening between these two parties? Shannon?
Look, I mean, it's quite clear that if there were going to be an electoral pact, the junior share has to go to BN, right? Simply because Pakatan starts from an incumbent position of 82 seats, and then you negotiate over the remaining seats that you didn't win, and BN's never going to accept that. BN does not go into or UMNO specifically does not go into an election as the junior partner of anybody.
Yeah,
right. It's just not how they think. So I think even from the get-go, that's a very difficult conversation to have. The 2023 state election is kind of different, right? You just had a general election. UMNO had just lost, and you kind of, Pakatan Harapan rescued you and brought you into government, right?
Yeah.
Now, as you move towards the next term, it's very usual. UMNO thinks that, we've revived, we've done rumor bangsa, everything is fine. People on the street tell me they love me again. So, let's go and win this next election and restore ourselves to our former glories. So I'm not trying to say that all this was a sham from day one, that there was no intention of keeping this going. I think if things had gone well, if, say, for example, they had somehow managed to win back support from the Malay majority from Perikatan Nasional, things are going fine and dandy. Hey, this would have become Barisan Nasional 2.0. They would have maybe even form a coalition on top of the coalition.
Yeah. And, I mean, like, it is already now a coalition of coalitions, right?
You would have the unity government meetings, right? That would happen in the BN in the UMNO headquarters, and Anwar sits in the BN chairman's chair.
Yeah.
And host that. That's effectively was a BN 2.0 kind of framework that we had. Because things have not gone according to plan, I think you will start seeing UMNO saying that, well, we need to get back the Malay vote. So what's the easiest way to do that? Well, go and say that everything is DAP's fault again, right? And then go into the election saying that anything that you didn't like about UMNO this past 3.5 years, that was their fault, right? And I think on Pakatan side, with this loss of their core constituents, non-Muslim urban voters that they saw in Sabah, if this continues into Johor, Negeri, they're going to say that, well, partnering UMNO was a problem. We shouldn't have done it in the first place, right?
They're just doing the same thing to each other.
Yeah. So if at all, I think the only kind of electoral pact you might see is kind of strategic in terms of if there are marginal seats won by PKR, marginal seats won by UMNO or even MCA and stuff like that, they might say, well, we don't disturb you in those 5 seats, you don't disturb us in these 5 seats. And you end up with both coalitions maybe contesting. I think at the last election, they both contested about 170, 180 seats or so. I mean, didn't contest in some of the Sarawak seats, stuff like that. Maybe they contest a bit less, but it's still going to be more than 150. They're both going to still be trying to shoot for a simple majority if possible, right? So mostly overlaps, maybe some tactical decisions not to contest against each other, but that will be broken at the highest level between Anwar and his best buddy, right? No one else has to be happy with this, right? But it's and the two parties that are mainly going to be affected is PKR and UMNO, right?
Yeah. To be
AP
honest,
seats are the AP seats, they will say that, well, we've only contest this many seats, we win most of them, but we don't need UMNO's help to win the seats, right? So their majorities tend to be 30, 40,000. So that's as best as I can tell any kind of electoral pact moving forward.
Yeah. Francis, is there any benefit at all of them going it alone or even, vice versa?
So I think there are a couple of drivers for at least the marriage to continue a little bit longer. So on UMNO's side, as we discussed, I think they want to have this series of state elections. If they had their way, they would have these 3 state elections first. They would do very well. And then that would take us to the end of the year. Then you've got flooding season. So maybe very early next year for them. Similarly, I think for PH, and we can talk a bit more about this later, they would also want it a bit later as well. Mm-hmm. But I think we can anticipate negotiations to be going on behind the scenes between everybody. So as we've discussed, we're now at a new stage in Malaysian politics where it's all about constructing a coalition of coalitions. So in this context, you want to keep your door open because you never know what is going to happen in the election. And then it's even possible that the individual coalitions break up as specific parties move across. But I think there's also two other games being played by UMNO. And that is that they are actually in the center. So that you can see them having conversations with Pakatan Harapan on one side and with Perikatan Nasional on the other. So they are positioning themselves to be the kind of bridge or to have the best of both worlds, or they can see which 2 worlds are offered to them, which one they like more on the other side. And then there's another driver as well. And then, Shannon, you alluded to sort of these gentlemen's agreements. I would think at the highest levels of people, not so much in Perikatan Nasional, but certainly in Pakatan Harapan and BN, want to avoid heated contests in their own seats. So if you look, of course, at Zahid Hamidi's seat of Bagan Datuk, right? The last election, wow, that was a very narrow majority in the hundreds, right? And you can also see that when Anwar decides what seats he's going to contest in, he most certainly does not want to be either, of course, losing or winning by the hair of his teeth. So you can be sure that these guys at least are going to be saying, hey, this seat, you don't touch, please, and you leave me this one. And then also for a few other strategic seats and strategic personalities. So these are the drivers for the sort of behind-the-scenes negotiations.
I'm just curious, how do this so-called gentleman's agreement would benefit each of them? If we assume they are going alone, but then when the government is formed, obviously each of the coalition would want to be the more dominant one. How would this agreement between them even work to their advantage?
So it would be only for a limited number of seats, or perhaps vulnerable ones that they really want for strategic purposes. So it's also a little bit like how you see their relationship persisting even though they're contesting at the state level. So it's like, okay, here we agree to disagree, here we cooperate, here we fight, and may the best man or coalition win. And then from there we make a decision.
Anything to add, Shannon?
There's also this thing that, was raised that, I think Kyrie said it in his podcast about BN having the most optionality, right? There are elements in Perikatan and elements in Pakatan Harapan refuse to work with each other, but they seem to be okay, both sides. So in the situation of a hung parliament going forward, I think then BN is certain to be in government, but just in what capacity. So then if you were sitting there and you're Anwar Ibrahim and thinking about it, well, then I would probably need to maybe form a similar kind of government with PN in it or GPS, so on and so forth from Sarawak. You would want to say that the person who makes decisions must want to partner me, which was what happened in 2022, right? Parts of BN wanted to go with Muhyiddin, parts of BN wanted to go with Anwar Ibrahim. And that part of the BN that wanted to go with Anwar happened to be the president's camp, which was the most important. So if you were Anwar, you would preserve Zahid and make sure he wins his next seat. And if you were Zahid, knowing that maybe he's got some acrimony with Hadi Awang, the past president in the past, you also would want to preserve Anwar Ibrahim and kind of say, wherever Anwar decides to contest, I can't be so blatant and tell my division, don't contest. But I put a weaker candidate, maybe.
Yep.
I'll send less resources down. Once the treasury has divided and allocated, I go whisper into, if Anwar goes back to Penang, for example, goes back to Pematang Power, and whisper to Penang UMNO, well, for Pematang Power, you don't need to put so many flags or hold so many ceramas. You can do more in Nibong Tebal and all the other seats, right? So there are any number of things which might not surface at the most public or transparent levels, but you can work around with your machinery. So much happens in war rooms that people never see, reporters, analysts never see, and all these kind of strategies. So as you mentioned, Bagan Dato was very close, but the person who contested against Zahid for Bagan Dato now has a corruption charge. So you have to be a different candidate.
Yeah, for sure.
It could possibly be a weaker candidate, right? Yeah. And that'll give Zahid an easier run.
Yeah, Shannon Francis, I mean, like, when Anwar talked about the possibility of calling an earlier snap election before, I'm just trying to understand how would this be to his benefit if it had actually happened back then. I mean, obviously, when he raised it, he would raise it because he was really thinking about it, and he would have thought that it would have, favored him, perhaps. Yeah. So, what do you make of it, Shannon?
I think he was doing two things. One is to kind of posture that we won't be held to ransom by anyone, right? I don't want to be remember in Muhyiddin's time or Ismail Sabri, the majority was 1, 2, or 3 MPs, however, a handful, and they were held to ransom by everyone. Anyone could go up to Muhyiddin and say, well, give me this, if not, I'm going to pull support. Anwar's not in that position, and I think the situation is that he's telling UMNO, look, if you want to pull out, you pull out. I'll continue governing for the next 1 year, and we'll rain hellfire on you, right? If not, you want to have, or we can go with a snap election, right? But I'll be the one determining the timing. I think the key thing is that I call the shots, not you. That's the main messaging, right?
I see.
Just because you think you want to have state elections first, as Francis talked about, BN would have been stronger going into individual states on its own. Well, maybe I don't want that. I'm going to have a stamp election and mess around with your plans, right?
Yeah.
And I think part of that messaging is also to, I'm not sure if I want to say this on air, but to other elements who wanted Johor to go first. And maybe he's putting his messaging there that, look, all these different things about timing of elections and how we want to do our electoral calculus moving forward. Look, I in the end hold the key for the biggest election, right?
Yeah.
And you have to come to talk to me about what you guys want, right? I'm not just sitting here and watching you guys play games. I can play my games as well. Whether he ever intended to call an election this year is beside the point, right? The message out there is like, don't you guys forget, I'm the Prime Minister.
Yeah,
right?
he still has that prerogative. Yeah.
And can I add something to that as well? Exactly on that point, I think once he said, okay, we can go to snap elections, the timing is not going to be in your favor, then, okay, everyone sits up and thinks, and then from there, okay, Negeri Sembilan goes. So then you, in a way, it sort of nullifies, assuming that, Pakatan Harapan does reasonably well in Negeri Sembilan. I think the wins are a bit more in their favor than they are in Johor. So it kind of nullifies the strategic advantage made by BN in Johor. They have their advantage, at least clawing away some of the majority that BN has in the state in Negeri Sembilan. So it's a little bit back more on an even keel, and some of the political pressure has been released, and he's not seen as being weak.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. Okay, last one. And we thank all our listeners for staying. And this is probably what we really want to know most. I mean, at least for me. I mean, I'm sure I want to know this, especially in the newsroom as well. Is there any chance at all that GE16 will happen this year? Or can we already book our holidays for the second half of the year? I mean, like, I've been waiting for, months. And we have been flip-flopping from, don't book your holidays. So, yeah, I'll let you go first, Shannon.
I think that okay, so I've openly been saying that I think it's going to be next year. In fact, I think Anwar will go full term, right?
Oh,
but
okay.
is there a window for it to happen this year? Yes, and it exists somewhere between September to November. But yeah, I think it's a remote chance, but it can happen. If they want to have an election, they can go there. But once we hit December, we all know about this year-end floods and stuff like that. December, January, no go. So if nothing happens by the time the budget is passed, then yeah, we can all start booking our December holidays.
So your deadline is the budget.
Once the budget is passed, not when it's tabled, because Ismail Sabri tabled a budget as well back then, and then they immediately dissolved. If they go through the trouble of debating it and passing at least at the second reading, then I think we're not going for an election. That is clearly the election budget that they want to roll out, not just announce as a promise. It means that they want to actually put in all this. Well, there's obviously going to be a lot of money being spent. It's it being the final year of the term. And they will roll it out so that they can win votes via the budget. I think that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah. So what's your take?
So at our book launch last week, we had 5 panelists, including a couple of politicians. There was a broad poll. They were asked the same question. So one person voted for 2026. The other 4 voted for 2027. Or actually, no one specifically mentioned full term. So perhaps we can add full term. So broadly, I agree with Shannon in the sense that I think, and also from what I've been hearing from people in Pakatan Harapan, is that PM Anwar would like to go longer. Let's also remember early in January this year, he had a number of deliverables that he said he wanted, including the time limit on prime ministerial tenures and so on and so forth. There were 4 items. So we would need Parliament to sit now over the next weeks for these things to be passed, presuming that they can be passed, number 1. And then, of course, number 2, yes, we also have the budget. And I would think one possible window would be in March to May next year. So it's just after flooding, it's after Chinese New Year and so on. And this could actually be when, if you have a very generous budget, actually people then begin to receive some of the money and they're feeling good. So this is one.
Yes.
The other one could be a kind of repeat after the budget in 2027 for 2028 or full term. So I think also in this new Malaysian context where we have more difficult situations in terms of getting a parliamentary majority, you tend to see people going more full term. The only exception is that, of course, PM Anwar doesn't control everything. And were we to see a run of really successful UMNO or BN elections in the 3 states that we've just mentioned, that could lead them to at least poll their numbers and then things look a bit more precarious. So that's one of the drivers that could lead to an earlier election.
Well, there you go, listeners. Now you know how and when to plan for your next holiday. Okay, right before we go, something I guess a bit lighter to end on. Though actually, the more I think about it, it's more of a story about urbanism and public space rather than about teenagers on TikTok. So our colleague in the Malaysia Bureau, Musliza Mustafa, reported that there is the recent social media ban for under 16 in Malaysia. I mean, like on paper, it sounds straightforward, but what the story captured beautifully is the thing nobody bothered to ask. I mean, like now without social media, where do kids go now? but I'm going to just get slightly nostalgic here because this story made me think about my own childhood as well. I mean, I grew up in Keluang Johor, and before the internet, I mean, back then we watched TV, I guess, no smartphones, but somehow we still fill our afternoons. Shannon, I mean, we are both, I guess, millennials, but genuine question. I mean, no wrong answers here. What did you do before to fill up your afternoons? We didn't have social media. I mean, what did you do?
Well, I actually identify as Gen X, even though I'm born in 1981. But but I like to talk about how the pop culture at that time took a few years to reach from America and the UK.
We got it a bit later lah.
So I would consume things older people in
for example.
So like all this stuff, Airwolf, Thundercats, Transformers, so on and so forth, right? Kids born in the 70s would be consuming them. MacGyver, right? Stuff like that. Nowadays it's live at the same time, right? It goes out on Netflix or whatever, and the whole world watches it at the same time. So there is no kind of developmental generational gap anyway. But I digress. Coming back to that, I mean, where was my third space? Two things. One is I'm a football fan. That's quite clear from the start of the show. So I would go to the padang in front of the house, and I was a ringleader. I go up to everyone's house, all the neighborhood kids around my age, and say, hey, let's go play football. Even girls, I'll say I can't play football, right? And so we'll be on the field in the evenings. Then something happened, which is how transport and mobility changes a lot. And then when all of us had bicycles, and suddenly your range is beyond the padang in front of the house. Go all sorts of places. And I even went to places I'm not supposed to go to, right? And I nearly killed myself, and literally speaking, I nearly rolled straight into a big monsoon drain because my brakes weren't working. But that was the reality of kids back then, right? You didn't have
at least you didn't
have
die.
the money to send your bike to a mechanic, so you just deal with it, right? And so I would say that if there's a kind of a lesson here in the end is that, look, I mean, people say that there are a lot of dangers online. It's true, right? There are also a lot of dangers in real life, right? And I don't think you can just say our kids will be safe the moment we shut down social media. Our kids will be safe the moment we do this. Everyone seems to have a silver bullet for it. I think some politicians were saying that you can stop bullying by reintroducing caning in schools, right? But the dangers exist everywhere. And I think I'm a father to a 9-year-old myself. And I think the first person to be responsible for my daughter's safety is her parents, right? Us. And instead of hunting around, blaming everyone else, or all these newfangled things that we don't understand as old fogies, right? As Gen X or Gen whatever we are. Just take time to understand it and then to figure out what's the best way for your own kids.
Yeah. So I grew up in Johor. So if you're in a Malay family, you usually have to attend not just the normal public school, but you also have to go to religious school, either before the afternoon session or after the morning session. So I rarely have much free time as it is. But I remember skipping a couple of religious school just to watch anime. Well, so Francis, how about you?
So the first few years of my childhood I spent in Kuching in Sarawak, and then from there we moved to Central America, to a country called Honduras. And so there I had two passions. One was reading westerns as well as science fiction, and then the other one was playing soccer, but we didn't have a padang. It was a one-way street.
Okay.
And so you just play in the street like Messi and Ronaldo and all of these people. That was my experience as a teenager in Central America.
Yeah. I think that's common, especially, I mean, like, my brothers, they grew up in UK, so they would just, block the whole street, right? I mean, they play football there. Yeah. I think it's common. But then even with all this freedom to play football, somehow Malaysia still couldn't produce our stars yet.
And play in a World Cup, yeah.
That's true, but you've got soccer, badminton, squash.
Yeah. Same. You play also in front, the gates in front of the terrace houses, and then you use that as your net.
You just use the front gate as your net.
Correct.
See, when there is hardship, there will be innovation. So perhaps we will see more innovation with the social media ban. I don't know.
Yeah, people getting around the social media ban will be the innovation.
Yeah. So that's all we have time for today. A huge terima kasih to both our guests. Keep an eye on Shannon Teoh and our Malaysia Bureau, who will be watching Johor very closely between now and the election on July 11. I mean, please tune in to our coverage. Just check out the Straits Times. But of course, don't forget, we also have the Asian Insider Malaysia Edition newsletter. So make sure you are subscribed to that. And also Francis Hutchinson from ISEAS Yusof Ishak Institute, whose work on Malaysian politics and governments, I think you should actually be reading. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, guys.
This has been Asian Insider, and I'm Zurairi A.R. If you find this useful, and we hope you did, please share this episode with someone who is trying to make sense of where Malaysia is headed politically. And again, like I mentioned earlier, go check out our newsletter as well, written by Shannon every week. And you can also find like coverage on politics, on this coming Johor state election. And we promise you, when the general election does come, we will keep an eye on that as well. We will put all these things in the show notes. This episode was produced by the wonderful Faizah Sani. Thank you as always, and we will see you again very soon. Jaga diri everyone. Thank you.